Supreme Court case today,
Yes.
where the 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court ruled that you do not have the right to give a green card to your spouse. If you marry a spouse who's from another country, they don't automatically get a right to green card. Amy Coney Barrett wrote that while the right to marry is fundamental, the right to live with your spouse is not.
Yeah.
That was the 6-3 conservative court today. And of course, I'm reading the case screaming, Melania, Melania, like as I'm reading the case, because the exact rule that Trump used to bring Melania and her whole family over to this country is what the Supreme Court said was not a fundamental right today. That was 6-3. That was 3 Republican justices that were appointed by Trump at the very time where this is all happening.
Many of whom are also the grandchildren or children of immigrants. But isn't it a fun world we live in?
There's a Supreme Court case today where the 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court ruled that you do not have the right to give a green card to your spouse. If you marry a spouse who's from another country, they don't automatically get a right to green card. Amy Coney Barrett wrote that while the right to marry is fundamental, the right to live with your spouse is not.
Yeah.
That was the 6-3 conservative court today. And
all these rights, kiss them goodbye. All these so-called rights under this incoming dictatorship, kiss them all goodbye. Got to make some plans. Got to make some plans, y'all. Welcome to Let It Be Known. Several headlines this morning as you guys prepare for a very busy week, a record travel week. They are predicting that it's going to be a whole lot of air and land travel. AAA says it's going to be the busiest perhaps ever. So enjoy it while you can. Just be safe out there. But the Justice Department is stopping a DEA's airport searches after $3.2 billion was seized from passengers without charges. Really interesting stuff. They're going to stop that random searches that we often hear about. We'll tell you why. Childcare costs now as much as rent for many families at inflation's peak, according to new data. We'll get into that as well. A New York judge is going to decide this week whether Diddy will be home for the holidays this week on his as he awaits trial for his May 2025 sex trafficking trial, and some more Diddy beef with Shine has come up over the weekend. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And in Georgia, folks, they've dismissed all members of their maternal mortality committee after a ProPublica report exposed details of some deaths, and we'll get into that as well. And in New York, who came up with this? Why was this even why was this even a matter of discussion? They have repealed a seldom used, more than century-old law that made it a crime to cheat on your spouse. And so they've repealed that law. Somebody said, listen, we better get that law off the books. For some reason, Governor Hochul has signed that bill, removing it from the law. We'll have a little fun with that, I guess, this morning. Speaking of having some fun, I see Orangey says that Barrett lady, I don't know what you're saying there about the black child should be against the law. And Usher Vance, Mike V is shaking his head about Usher Vance this morning. When is it never not time to shake your head when it but she she's going to be the second lady, and I don't know about the latest on her, Mike, but I tell you what, she seems like she is not necessarily into all of this, don't know what to make of all this. He says adopted. Okay, so the Barrett lady adopted a black child, and it should be a law against that, he says, Mike V. So here's the thing with Usher Vance. Is that how you say her name? Usha? It's not Usher. We can't name her Usher. But here's the latest. So, um, from apparently some JD Vance planted an enthusiastic kiss on her. And it was in light of some immigration situation. He says he was referring to the Supreme Court decision that Ellie Mistel was saying about marrying an immigrant doesn't automatically get you citizenship. Now she kind of, so what I'm, and that's guess where I'm going. It was they're saying it was a very awkward moment that he kissed her, and someone mentioned this immigration thing. Um, at the time of this bizarre, kiss, and his mouth was like wide open, and she was like not really like Trump and Melania, like Trump trying to hold Melania's hand. So, but yeah, the look, marrying an immigrant doesn't automatically get you citizenship. There's a lot of stuff that is going to be uh change that is changing, and come January 20th, they're going to um they're going to change so much, because they can, and because there's a lot of evil going on, a lot. So, and folks, the problem with evil, I've said this a lot of times, evil tends to live a long time. It's like, remember those vampire movies where you can't shoot the vampire, you can't hang the vampire, you can't stab you got to put it through the heart. That's the only way to get rid of the vampire, is a stake through the heart. Yeah, and that's just that's the bottom line. Austin says Melania and Usha will be deported during the inauguration. Well, that's the thing, right? Melania, she might have his kids and everything, but this idea of her not living at the White House, not holding his hand, um, no type of affection for him. I don't know. He might run out of patience. He might run out of patience. Dictators, they've been known to lop the head off their own spouses. It's not beyond them. So Austin, I don't know. Melania could be in some trouble. She keeps forsaking the boss, the Don. Where was she when Mika was at Mar-a-Lago is what I want to know. Where was she at? Because I know Secret Service took Joe downstairs and said, "Hey." Mike B says, Usha may have voted for Kamala Harris too. Yeah, well, that would be if that's the case, and if they were to find out, that would not bode too well for her. He says, "Tell Trump to pull an OJ on the line." It's Monday morning, and we are really going for the throat this morning, huh? With these comments, pulling OJ. What exactly does it mean to pull an OJ? I'll let Austin tell us what exactly it means to pull an OJ. Austin might have some ideas. Who knows? But the Drug Enforcement Administration is no longer allowed to randomly search travelers at airports and other transit hubs after a scathing report from the Justice Department found serious concerns with the practice. DEA agents failed to properly document searches, and they may have illegally targeted, no question about it, minorities. And in at least one case, paid an airline employee tens of thousands of dollars over several years to suggest targets for searches. All of this, according to a report released by Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz. The Deputy Attorney General ordered the DEA to suspend the random searches after seeing a draft of the memo. The report refers to video of one traveler's experience in which it went viral this past July. I don't know if you saw that, but it was released by the Institute for Justice, a nonprofit civil rights law firm. And the traveler, who's identified only as David C., tells the unidentified agent that I don't consent to search. He says, I don't consent to a search, sir. And the agent then says, I don't need your consent. He says, I don't care about your consent stuff. And so the report, ironically, is no longer available on DOJ's site, which is really interesting. The agent claimed the dog alerted him to the bag, to this man's bag, and David continued to refuse to allow the search to go on, but eventually he gave in. The agent didn't find anything illegal in the backpack, but by the time the whole ordeal was over, David had missed his flight to New York. And David was singled out because he had purchased a last-minute ticket, the agent said in the video. The agent said we wouldn't do this and be doing it across the country if it wasn't legal. He says it would be shut down, which is apparently what has happened. A subsequent investigation found that the DEA had been paying at least one airline employee a percentage of seized cash for several years in exchange for information about passengers who purchased tickets to certain cities within 48 hours of travel. Now, back in 2016, USA Today investigated this situation as well with the seizures, and they found that DEA agents at 15 major airports seized more than $209 million from at least 5,200 travelers over the prior decade. Most of that money was shared with local police departments, and it was never returned to the travelers. Even musician Brian Moore had $8,500 taken from him at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. He was never charged with the crime, and it took more than a year for him to get his money back in a legal battle. Now, it was $8,500 that they took from him. It cost him, and he was fighting it on principle, $15,000 to fight it. And so this is a program that has desperately failed and certainly singles out minorities. So, but as Greer mentioned, the report can't be found anymore. Mysteriously disappeared from the DOJ's website. So unreal, unreal. I gotta agree. I'm sorry, but my phone was ringing. It was Dr. Chavis. What we doing? Let it be known, Doc, as we do every morning this time. Childcare, folks, is going out is outrageous. Many families have been effectively cutting a second rent check to send their kids to daycare, according to new information from the Department of Labor. It's no secret that childcare expenses have put a huge squeeze on households across the country, but the federal numbers show just how steep those costs became from one country to the next during the worst inflation in 40 years. On average, families spent anywhere from $6,552 to as much as $15,600 on full day care per child in 2022. Excuse me. The upper range is a few $100s more than that year's median annual rent. The agency said while incomes also range widely throughout the country, households typically funnel between about 9% to 16% of their annual income on daycare per child. So if you have multiple children, just do the math, right? It's pretty steep. Gretchen Livingston, who is the branch chief for quantitative research at the Labor Department's Women's Bureau, said these costs are just untenable for an awful lot of families. We know that Vice President Kamala Harris had outlined proposals to bring down child care costs, including expanding the child tax credit and boosting resources for child care centers and caregivers. Um, and it's really incredible that she had outlined this, but Trump benefited overwhelmingly from broad-based economic dissatisfaction, which is really interesting. And also think about this for all those who just fell in love with the idea that you got a stimulus check a few years ago. Think about this. The child care tax credit had taken so many kids out of poverty. So many these problems were not there. And you guys talked about a one-time stimulus check when you had so many other benefits. David Youngblood says that chain migration will remove the kids as well. And so this is what you get. This is another example of what was at stake and that folks just dropped the ball in a major way. Yeah, I really think we talk so much about who voted for whom, and but I really think that just like the Democrats, there are so many other people who just really depended on black folks. That's what happened. They depended upon black folks, and and black folks did what they needed to do. But yeah, y'all didn't help them. Y'all didn't help black folks. So thus thus you get this. Mike V says the notion that the campaign left working class people behind is bunk. I always enjoy when people use that word, Mike. Bunk. um, bunk. I don't know why I get a kick out of that word. It's not a word you just use every day. Mike V apparently uses it. He says her policies proposals focus on the working class exclusively. Trump's drill baby drill and deporting 10 million people was not about the working class. No, and we talked about that too, Mike. As you know, all of the intentional and misinformation and the willful ignorance that went on um, when folks saying, yeah, "Oh, they're taking black jobs." You know, they allowed him to get away with that. Not only get away with that, but to have it entrenched that it was something true, as if he ever says anything that's true. Immigrants do not take black jobs. What is a black job? I didn't know that jobs was supposed to be classified in that way anyway. In fact, I will assure you that they're not. Only if you're racist, they are. Because what is a black job? I guess the housing and urban development is a black job, because under the first Trump administration, there was that idiot Ben Carson. And now under this administration, he found him another boot boy. And so while Byron Donalds and Tim Scott make excuses as to why they are not in the big house, well, they out there on the plantation wondering, what next, boss? We sick, boss? Um, RNG says he truly believes that the black people who voted for Trump, they wanted a pat on the head, like AKA Byron Butter Biscuits Donalds. No black job for him in the Trump administration. So there you have it. That's just the way it is. But this child care situation, and so what's interesting is they want you to have all of these kids, what the Vance say, you shouldn't be childless. I mean, who are you to you just think about that? Just if folks just take a breather just for a second when they hear such preposterous stuff, instead of running with it, um, just take a second. Who the heck are you to say that I should have children? There are many extremely successful people, many, 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 who don't have children. There are many with children who are successful. I consider myself successful. Um, but those without children, who are you to say that, as tough as you guys, you politicians, have made it to raise kids, it's probably the best thing that people don't have children. You have created, and especially since Obama left office, and this is not a plug as a pro-Obama speech, but we know since he left office, things have really, really, the revenge, the retribution that they talk about has been relentless. And it's culminating into what we see now. The world has changed in a very dramatic way because you guys, somebody made the mistake and put a black man in the White House. And so since then, America has been paying the price. Donald Trump knew that and exploited it, and now it's entrenched in the American culture. And so this is where we are, on the verge of Vladimir Putin running this country, along with Elon Musk. I mean, could you have fathomed, some years ago, Elon Musk and a Russian dictator running the United States? That's where we at. Trump is like the coach. Yeah, because you got the coach, Trump, you got the general manager, Elon Musk, and then you got the team president, Vladimir Putin. Right. So Trump's job is to be beholden to the general manager, who's beholden to the president. And he is to direct the troops on the ground. Trump's job, the coach. Mike V says Donald Putin. It's just a fact. It's a fact. And like I said last week, prove it wrong. And one of the things that really stood out was that message from Vladimir Putin, among other things, that that we found out with Trump sending all of those during COVID, those tests to Vladimir Putin when Americans couldn't get any, when Americans was dying, like, I mean, groups of, at a time. I mean, every hour, hundreds were just dropping dead from COVID. But when Vladimir put out those nude photos with Melania and another woman 2 weeks ago after the election, it was a message. And Trump has not said anything. Let that have been Joe Biden putting that out, or Barack Obama. And make no mistake, Putin had to approve that going out. State-run television, state-run news. RNG says Trump is the carnival barker, Putin is the puppet master, and Musk is racist with the money, who controls Trump and Putin. There you go. There you go. He directed it. He definitely directed it. Putin definitely directed that. But that's where we are. It's like it's not about you know, griping over it. It's happened, but it's just facts. When you lay it out, let's lay out the facts. That's the problem. That's part of why we're in this situation now with these faux journalists, fake news reporters, and everybody got a podcast. And everything they say, despite it being their opinion, they push it as truth. And then, of course, with all of the misinformation, you guys, many people have turned away from real news. And look, let's face it, where's the real news coming from? It's coming from Let It Be Known. It's coming from the Black Press USA, Roland Martin. But it's only a few of us. It's only a few of us. Miss Perry's watching. She says, apparently the world has not changed. We've been living in a bubble to believe Americans were not racist and that there was any level of equity or equality among all people in America. Freedom only applies to racists in America because they're the only ones who do what they want to do without retribution or accountability. It's hard to argue with that too, right? And it goes along with what I said last week, what Miss Perry just said, and people may not agree with it. But here is we speak truth to power. When it will all boil down to it, what made us even remotely believe that this racist country would have put a Black woman in office when a very qualified white woman couldn't get in office in 2016? And we know Kamala Harris this year was probably, you have to really dig, and you may not find a more qualified person for the presidency ever when it comes to politics. You will not be able to find that. She was attorney general. She was district attorney, senator, among other things. HBCU grad, and y'all can have your Harvards and your Yales, but you get an HBCU diploma, degree. You had to have earned every bit of that. These guys come out of Harvard, Yale, whatever, because their parents did and gave all this money, and they were pushed through to give them a start that they refused to give us. Mike V says there's nothing stopping Biden administration from yanking Elon's secret clearance that will put Trump in a big pickle. But Mike, you know that Joe Biden is like most Democrats. they don't have the spine to do something like that. We talked about Joe Biden last week. And while we have been among, if not the primary vehicle that has extolled the virtues of what that administration did and tried to do for African Americans, we also know that he's not going to do anything now. We also know that Biden has a history that he's never been able to shake. And that handshake at the White House a week or so ago with Trump, they dapping each other up. And you probably read about it on Black Press USA. Because I wrote it. It was an affront to Black folks everywhere. Biden knew what he was doing. Biden, I'm gonna pick a Black woman vice president. I'm gonna put a Black woman in the Supreme Court. But he did nothing else for the Supreme Court. He did nothing else for the Supreme Court. He did nothing else for the courts. They're still not pushing through these nominations. Folks, we we are at war. He's supposed to have our back. It's supposed to have suppose the man has only had it's proven. You are who you are. You show it, you eventually show it. When that time comes, when you need somebody standing up, and it's like we wrote again, Black folks, if you haven't learned anything else, you certainly have been taught you have no allies. You have no allies. And that's just the bottom line. And again, it's imperative that, again, I'm looking forward to our conversation with Al Sharpton. Because it's imperative that the Black press and others, it's imperative that folks start working together. We can't look at each other as competition or adversaries. But I'm going to leave that to the Dr. Chavises of the world, to the Bobby Henrys of the world. That's their lane, and we can only hope, the Derek Johnsons of the world, Mr. ACLU, not ACLU, you know who I'm talking about, the other, Urban League, all those folks can only hope that they are understanding the moment, understanding the dire situation that we all are in, and somebody is crafting a plan. This is really serious, folks. This is serious. This is serious. As I keep saying, this is one of those moments. This is one of those moments. If you got the title and the position, then do something about it. Diddy's attorneys has issued a cease and desist letter to ex-protege Shine over the new documentary he released. The former Bad Boys Records rapper made a number of revelations in the new documentary, including his belief that he was the fall guy for the music mogul in the 1999 New York City nightclub shooting. Remember that whole thing with J-Lo? The incident resulted in Shine receiving a 10-year prison sentence for his involvement, while Diddy walked away without any jail time. Shine had recently gone on a number of interviews where he discussed these claims. And meanwhile, Diddy has denied the claims, describing them as unequivocally false. And several reports say that Diddy has sent a cease and desist letter to, quote, ensure that Shine stick to factual claims after alleging that he took the fall for Diddy in 1999. A lot of people believe that Shine took the fall. But the one thing I remember so vividly when during that court case, and they played a audio, if you many might remember, of Jennifer Lopez in the car with Diddy saying Shine, and her exact words were Shine busted off, meaning he busted shots off. And so she obviously saw Shine take some shots. And several shots were fired in the incident. Obviously, 3 bystanders were injured, which led to Shine being charged with assault and reckless endangerment, and Diddy with gun possession and bribery. So it remains unclear whether Shine, who's now a politician in Belize, directly received a cease and desist letter or what actions he plans to take if he did. But they continue to have their back and forth, he and Diddy. And meanwhile, this week, a judge is going to decide if Diddy can go home on bond or remain in custody. It's the third attempt at bail for Diddy. He's offered life and limb, almost life anyway, limbs to for freedom. $50 million he's offered, along with all of his family's passports, selling his private plane. He said he will be on house arrest. He's offered now to include not having any devices, including phones, only to call his lawyer. So, and as we said, look, we can make fun of the man, and certainly, most of us are appalled at the video of what he did to Cassie. Um, but the one thing that we don't do on Let It Be Known is take away from a black man the presumption of innocence. Y'all, folks, this criminal injustice system does it enough. We do not need to do it too. And believe me, we are no fans of P. Diddy Combs, but we have to draw the line. When it comes to a black person, somebody has to draw the line, and we, the black press, have to draw that line. We have to um, afford him and accord him that presumption of innocence. Let the courts do what they may. Let the system do what it may. But let's not be those who pile on. We're not going to do that. Y'all can do it. We're not doing it. We're going to say we are appalled and believe wholeheartedly he should be punished for what he did to Cassie. Now, these other charges, we have to wait and see. We have to wait and see. But he certainly needs to be punished, and maybe he is being punished. Maybe this is part of that punishment for Cassie. I've always been certainly an advocate of don't just take the civil way. Do both, civil and criminal. And Cassie, to her credit, is doing both. Because to me, you leave questions. It's not to say that women don't tell the truth. They do. But you leave questions when you just go after the dollar. And if he's such a predator, you okay with him? Predators are going to prey. They're going to continue to prey on folks. So is it a situation where I got mines, I could care less about you guys? And that's what I love about what Cassie has and is doing. She reportedly got $100 million settlement with him. And yet she is still the prime witness for the prosecution. That, folks, she deserves to be supported too, in a major way. That I can get behind. Georgia officials have dismissed all members of a state committee charged with investigating deaths of pregnant women. The move came in response to a ProPublica report where they obtained internal reports detailing 2 deaths. ProPublica reported in September on the deaths of Amber Thurman and Candy Miller, which the state maternal mortality review committee had determined were preventable. They were the first reported cases of women who died without access to care restricted by a state abortion ban, and they unleashed a torrent of outrage over the fatal consequences of such laws. The women's stories became a central discussion in the presidential campaign and ballot initiatives involving abortion access in 10 states. Dr. Kathleen Toomey, who is the commissioner of the State Department of Public Health, wrote in a letter that confidential information provided to the Maternal Mortality Review Committee was inappropriately shared with outside individuals. Even though this disclosure was investigated, the investigation was unable to uncover which individuals disclosed confidential information. Therefore, effective immediately, the current MMRC is disbanded and all member seats will be filled through a new application process. A health department spokesperson declined to comment on the decision to dismiss the committee, saying that the letter which the department provided to ProPublica speaks for itself. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp's office also declined to comment, referring questions to the health department, who also refused to comment. Under Georgia's law, the work of the Maternal Mortality Review Committee is confidential, and members must sign a confidentiality agreement. Those members see only summaries of medical records stripped of personal details, and their findings on individual cases are not supposed to be shared with the public, not even with hospitals or with family members of women who died. Isn't that something? And we know, folks, come on, we've talked about this forever. And again, Vice President Kamala Harris had spent much of her 4 years in office as vice president, um, as with this as one of her top issues, because we know that, and we use this word all the time, it disproportionately affects Black women. And so this is really interesting. Georgia had 32 standing members that included OBGYNs, cardiologists, mental health care providers, medical examiners, health policy experts, and community advocates on that board. They consider it a volunteer position, but they are paid a small, what they call a small honorarium. But this, again, this mortality situation, maternal mortality situation, we cannot expect it to get better under the incoming regime. In fact, we see they made sure that it's going to be chaos. We have to protect our women, guys. We really do. Well, I thought this was really funny because I'd like to know. It's Shonda H. Before I get to that, Shonda H. is like coming in swinging. She says that's total bullcrap. They can release the data without compromising HIPAA law. It sounds like they don't want their colleagues' failures to be exposed. 100%. 100%. Um, Adultery is no longer a crime in New York. No, who who took time out of what supposed they claim to be so busy, these lawmakers, right? They barely have time for any constituent. But who took out the time to craft a repeal of a law that's been on the books for what 117 years? But Governor Hochul, Kathy Hochul, signed off on repealing the law which prohibits adultery. And not that adultery didn't happen in New York, because it certainly does. But New York's penal law previously said that a person is guilty of adultery when he engages in sexual intercourse with another person at a time when he has a living spouse, or the other person has a living spouse. It was considered a Class B misdemeanor, which carries a jail sentence of up to 3 months. The New York State Senate called the law outdated. Assemblyman Charles Levine is the culprit, folks. He wrote the bill that overturned the law. He said 13 people were arrested and charged under the law, while 5 people were convicted. Now, the numbers, many argue with his numbers, it may not be completely accurate because some court records are not accessible or easily accessible. But the most recent case was in 2010, and that case was tossed out. But okay. His problem is that only 13 people have been arrested. And so it's a waste. It's not a waste. We have laws on the books for robbery and murder, right? Suppose New York went 10 years or so without a robbery or murder. Do we take murder and robbery off the books? I mean, people say, "Oh, that's a stretch. You know, that's not a fair comparison." It's the law. Somebody said, I was in a meeting with Washington Informer publisher Denise Roloff Barnes and a gentleman who was pushing a story for the Black press. Denise wanted me to join the meeting because the guy wanted to know if NMPA we could write it for NMPA. So I joined the meeting. The guy going on, and he said, "So you mean it's not worth your ink?" And I looked incredulous because wait a minute, we're in 2024. We're not even talking about ink anymore. Space in the newspaper. We're talking website. We're talking there's unlimited space on the website. It's not about that. And if they did not repeal this law because it's on the books don't need to change. It doesn't need to change. The moral fiber of this world is so bad that an Assemblyman Charles Levine had to sit down and write this bill to overturn a law that really, folks, being serious about it, it's almost like treason when you cheat on if someone cheats on their spouse. That's like treason. And if they have a way of getting some sort of recompense, someone may have had that happen to them and then realize, wait a minute, I can get some form of retribution because it's on the books in New York. Now, uh, Charles Levine says, I'm taking it off the books. It's so nonsensical. How about standing up for some sort of morality? But it's just not in people in this world. This country has gone. It's in the sewer. Orrin G says, if you pay a lawmaker enough, he or she will come up with any law you like. Adultery is still illegal in the U.S. military. You will be court-martialed and kicked out of the military if you are convicted and receive an other than honorable discharge. And that's good to know, especially with the military, which has really, by many accounts, been rampant with sex abuse. And harassment. Some years ago, I did a story about the rampant abuse in the military. And that was circa 2009, 2008, I believe. But it's good to know that there is some honor there. What does Charles? I wonder if Charles Levine is married. and his and he has the inclination to play the field a little bit. I don't know. He wants to get that off the law. He don't want to do the 3 months.
Just how low can private prisons go? Ask the GEO Group. This corporation makes $1.6 billion a year locking people up. Its long record of abusing and neglecting prisoners is second to none.
The Coke County facility was a facility run by the GEO Corporation. It was disgusting. There was an infestation of insects everywhere you looked, including the kitchen, insects in the food. It was horrible.
East Mississippi Correctional Facility, and it was run by GEO the first 2 months that I was there. Just dirty, nasty, unsanitary conditions. I mean, people get stabbed in there, they're bleeding, or they get in a fight and they're bleeding. They don't give no cleaning chemicals to clean the place up or nothing. The sewer kept backing up in the zones. The toilets kept stopping up. The stench was so bad in there, I couldn't eat anymore.
A blistering report by the U.S. Justice Department describes systemic, egregious, and dangerous practices at a juvenile prison in Mississippi.
Prison staff had sex with incarcerated youth, which investigators called among the worst that we've seen in any facility anywhere in the nation.
Coke County, run by GEO, was the worst facility that I've seen in this country, without question, without comparison.
It ought to be illegal.
Meanwhile, the GEO Group CEO makes $6 million a year. How does such an abusive company make that much money? It knows how to play the political game.
GEO Group has told its investors that things like the loosening of drug laws and immigration reform could be very bad for its business.
GEO Group has hired an army of lobbyists in 17 states while donating to over 400 candidates.
If you ask people, should a multi-billion-dollar corporation be able to profit from the incarceration of people and turn around and spend some of its profits lobbying for more people to be put in its facilities, I think the average person in the United States says that that's a really bad idea. Private prison corporations like GEO Group thrive when no one pays attention.
And that's who's heading the DOJ under Trump. That's who's been picked to head. She's also has been very, very vocal about wanting to prosecute folks like Fonnie Willis, Alvin Bragg, the special prosecutor, and special counsel, and others who have put Donald Trump on trial. She has made that very clear that that's her intention as Attorney General, to prosecute all who have charged Trump, the judges who have presided over those cases, with the exception, of course, Trump's crony down in Florida, who presided over the documents case. So this is what you're getting. So it was pick your poison, Matt Gaetz or Pam Bondi. And so there you have it. There you have it, folks. This is where Greer needs to what is it, Greer? Molly girl, we in trouble type thing. That's that's where we are. That's where we are. Folks, stay with us. We appreciate you on this Monday morning. It's finally starting to really feel like fall. We're starting to really get that fall weather. Even some rain came through the East Coast over the last few days, a couple of times over the last few days. Lots of travel, as we said at the top, lots of traveling going on. AAA is predicting record travel. So if you're planning to travel, do it safely. Afford yourself extra time to do it. And yes, indeed, we have Al Sharpton this week on Let It Be Known. So stay tuned as we get his insights on what's next, not just for civil rights, but for all of Black America. So stay tuned to Let It Be Known as we bring you more and more information and details that you can use going forward in this new world. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.